The themes of microeconomics. The Rolling Stone once said, "You can always, you can always get what you want." This is true. For most people, even make target that there are limits to what you can have or do is a simple fact of life learned in early childhood. For economists, however, it can be an obsession. Much of microeconomics is about limits. The limited income that consumers can spend on goods and services, the limited process and technical know-how that firms can use to produce things, and the limited number of hours in a week that workers can allocate to labor or leisure. But microeconomics is also about ways to make the most of these limits. More precisely, it is about the accumulation of scarce resources. For example, microeconomics explains how consumers can best allocate their limited income to the various goods and services available for purchase. It explains how workers can best allocate their time to labor instead of leisure, or to one job instead of another. And it explains how firms can be best allocate limited financial resources to hiring additional workers, versus buying new machinery and to producing one set of products versus another. In a planned economy such as of Cuba, North Korea, or the former Soviet Union, these accumulation decisions are made mostly by the government. Firms are told what and how much to produce and how to produce it. Workers have little flexibility in choice of jobs, hours worked, or even when they leave, and consumers typically have a limited set of goods to choose from. As a result, many of the tools and concepts of microeconomics are of limited relevance in those countries. In modern market economics, consumers, workers, and firms have much more flexibility and choice when it comes to locating scarce resources. Microeconomics describes the trade-offs that consumers, workers, and firms face, and so how these trade-offs are best made. The idea of making optimal trade-off is an important term in microeconomics. Let's look at it in more detail. Consumers have limited incomes, which can be spent on a wide variety of goods and services or sales for future. Consumer theory describes how consumers, based on their differences, maximize their well-being by trading off the purchase of more of goods with some purchase of less of others. They will also see how consumers describe how much of their income to save, thereby trading off current consumption for future consumption. Workers also face constraints and make trade-offs. First, people must decide whether and when to enter the workforce, because the kinds of jobs and corresponding pay scales available to a worker depend in part on educational attainment and accumulated skills. One must trade off working now and earning an intermediate income with continued education and the hope of earning higher for future incomes. Second, workers face trade-off in their choice of employment. For example, while some people choose to work for large corporations that offer job security but limited potentials for advancement, others prefer to work for small companies where there is more opportunity for advancement but less security. Finally, workers must sometimes decide how many hours per week they wish to work, thereby trading off labor for leisure. Firms Firms also face limits in terms of the kind of products that they can produce and the resources available to produce them. The Ford Motor Company, for example, is very good at producing cars and trucks, but it does not have the ability to produce airplanes, computers, or pharmaceutical. It is also constrained in terms of financial resources and the current product capacity of its factories. Given these constraints, Ford must decide how many of each type of vehicle to produce if it wants to produce a lesser total number of cars and trucks next year or the year after. It might decide whether to hire more workers, build more factories, or to both. The theory of the firm describes how this trade-off can be best made. A second important term of microeconomics is the role of price. All of the trade-off describes about the based on the price fettered by consumer, worker, and firms. For example, consumer trade-off beer for chicken based partly on heat preference for each one, but also on their prices. Likewise, workers trade off labor for leisure based in part on price that they can get for their labor, the wage. And firms decide whether to hire more workers or purchase more machines based in part on wage rate and machine prices. Microeconomics also describes how prices are determined in a socialist planet economy. Prices are set by the government. In a market economy, prices are determined by the interaction of consumers, workers, and firms. This interaction occurs in market collection of buyer and seller, that